Hello there, Atria here. Today we're going to be doing a video covering the Tourism DLC and a brief overview of Game Update 11. We'll be going over some of the new additions and the DLC's mechanics. There will be more in-depth, more detailed breakdown guides coming out in the very near future. This is just going to be a brief overview of my opinion and what you're going to expect while going into the DLC. The first thing we'll do is just briefly go over one or two things from Game Update 11. The first thing is the game devs brought in a brand new questline for M-Pesa and Land of Lions owners. Now this questline, I'll be doing a full playthrough of it, but brief description is it is a nice little bit of lore in regards to the history of M-Pesa and gives a detailed background. The next thing they brought in was a new slow motion mode, which allows you to slow down the time down to 50%. Very useful if you are struggling on production or just want to go into pure build mode and don't want to have to worry about running out of materials, or if you're at a war state and you want to micromanage everything a little bit more efficiently. The next thing they brought in was for the world class reefer. Yes, they fixed the bug. They now have the elite magnate speed buff, which is when you spend 300 points of influence into trade ships, your trade ships will get the movement speed of plus 25. So now this ship is actually worth making. I'll be doing a full breakdown on timings in a future video. The next thing is for you budding aesthetic and beauty building people. So what they brought in, the first part was the ugly dark grass tiles that under your ornaments and trees that you place down that just makes everything look disjointed and stands out from each other, as we can see over here. Just all these sharp colored edges that are very dark versus the rest of the area. They now brought in the option to, you can choose whether you want to have the dark grass, or we can actually go into options, gameplay, down to the bottom and use light colored grass. So you can actively change them to a lighter version. So as you can see, much more unified and natural looking. There is a slight difference in the color, but it is so much more subtle that you will not really be able to notice it unless you are properly looking for it. So it makes everything look a lot cleaner and a lot more natural. And one of the last things they brought in was the painting tool for the trees, and this works in all of the maps that all have their own specific type of trees. Like here in the Cape and the Old World, you will have mixed trees, deciduous, and fir trees, and in the New World you'll have the trees native to that area, and in like the Arctic you'll have the frost and snow covered firs out there. So what you can do is just highlight the tool and paint an area, and then you can add extra trees into the middle of it from the different categories. Much more natural. This has a added benefit as well. If you're trying to do a speed build, what you can do is, previously where you had a lumberjack hut, if you place the lumberjack hut down, it'll go through the planting process. However, if you have a lumberjack hut and place it into a already forested area, it will skip the planting process and go straight into production. So if you're going speed runs, this is something very useful. If you want specific trees for the actual lumberjacks, so you can actually specify that you only want this to be a fir lumberjack hut, you can put down firs. And lastly, for the people that own the Land of Lions DLC, they brought in the queuing system for the Research Institute, which allows you to go into the Research Institute and queue up to 50 items. Now you don't need all the research points available there and then for all 50 items. What the system will do is it will queue up the item, and then it will wait until the research points become available when the first one runs out, and then it will just kick in the production at that point. So let's develop in a housing permit, and we will craft another one and another one and another one. We can just keep crafting them all up. They don't have to be the same thing. We can go in and add in some oil wells. We could even, if we wanted to, go in and add in some people or items as well. And you can actually move those around. So if there's something that becomes a priority, you can switch them around on the fly. So as I was saying before, if the research points aren't available, it will just sit paused once it's completed this first one until it has the research points to start the oil well, and then it will process that. And it's 50 items per. So the tourist DLC, what did it actually bring us? The tourist DLC brought us in a brand new tier of residents into the actual city, and these are the tourists. The tourists contribute to your global population, and they'll also bring in a form of income to the island as well. Now they will list up here as workforce, as you'll be utilizing the tourists' workforce in some of the actual items like the cafe, the restaurant, and the bars. You'll need a certain number of tourists to be able to utilize the actual buildings. Now the tourist workforce is not shared via the commuter peers. So as you can see up here, we have the working force up here, and if we jump to an island where it's shared, the tourists do not cross over. With the tourist DLC, we have a new selection of consumables and production items and resources that we're going to be needing to obtain and produce. Now for the actual housing and the production lines, the existing items in game will not affect any of these items, and there are no new items with the tourist DLC. So what you're going to be getting is going to be locked in as a base value. So if we actually have a look at the hotel, as we can see here, the hotel can contain 500 tourists, and you cannot boost this, and we have a set of requirements down here, like the tourist mooring, they need a variety theatre, jam, shampoo, the iron tower, and the amenities as well. They also have a happiness tab, however they have a lot of extra options in here, so we can actually boost the happiness up from the tourists very high. So tourists are really good at boosting your overall happiness on an island. Now on the left hand side here, these are the standard ones, which you'll be able to get access with any version of the game, the base version. And then we have on the right hand side, optionals, which may be locked behind DLCs like Botanical and the Seat of Power and Docklands itself. So we have mandatory and optionals on the side. So the tourists brought in a few new buildings themselves, and they need access to some of the existing buildings. And we connect the tourists in the hotels to all these other buildings through a bus network. So we have the bus depots here, and the blue circle is the indication on where the actual tourists will travel to in this blue circle. So these are the connected buildings in this range, and then there'll be a highlighted area of the overall distance that the bus will travel, so you can interconnect them and have a full coverage across the whole island. However, the actual tourists will only travel to buildings inside that blue range, and the hotels have their own individual separate range. More detail on that later. Now the cafe, restaurant, and bar all have recipes that you can utilize, and some of the recipes will require some new items and resources from the tourist DLC in conjunction with some of the existing resources, and they'll have a bonus to happiness to your regular people around, and they can also reduce the amount of consumption of different food and drink produce that your regular people will be going through as well. As we can see, the hotel here doesn't require access to electricity, and neither do the cafe, restaurants, and bars. They also don't utilize a regular working force to be functional. They utilize the actual tourists themselves. And as we can see here, each of the restaurants, cafes, and bars will actually have a blue circle for me on my color to indicate the range of its boosts or benefits or consumption reductions. The last production building is the chemical factory, The chemical factory is utilized to make the souvenirs, shampoo, and the lemonade that the tourists will require as well. As we can see here, you can actually boost it through electricity, but you cannot boost it with any other items in game. And it also utilizes the engineering workforce as well. So you will need some overhead on engineers as well on your island. The cafe restaurants and bars, as they have a small radius on them, are designed to be scattered across the island. So you can have multiple stacking restaurants and cafes dotted around doing different meals and drinks. Now there is another item connected to it, and that is the monument, and that is the Iron Tower. Now you can only have one of these on the island at a time, and whereas the cafe, restaurants, and bars have consumption reduction and a happiness boosting, the Iron Tower requires one extra input item, but it will replace the happiness with a 10% housing increase size, and that crosses over to all of your regular housing sizes. Now when you click on the actual Eiffel Tower and you place it down, Iron Tower, it will have a small radius on it. However, similar to the engineers and the research institute, you can apply extra tourists and increase the actual range of the benefits from the Iron Tower. And the Iron Tower can get a boost on its production of the actual items that it's making with electricity as well. So the requirements for the cafes, restaurants, and bars and the chemical factory are going to require some existing items in game, and they're also going to require some new items in game. And the items that you're going to be getting new from the game are through the orchard system. Now, this is very similar to a lumberjack system, as in you'll place down an orchard and it will have a area of effect that it will cover, and you can overlap them similar to like a lumberjack hut. However, there will be diminishing returns on how effective it is. At the present moment in time, we cannot use forest density items to boost this up. However, that may change in the future. Now, orchards are only available in 2 maps, and that is the Old World and the Cape, and in the New World. Now, in the Cape and Old World, we only have one option here. And if we have a look here, it is to make the jam, and that is from the cherries. It's also very pretty. We have the cherry blossoms here on the trees. Now, if we have a look at the New World, as we can see here, we have a selection here of 4 different seeds that we can place down, and you can intermix these together and have different fields and different combinations of things growing together. So we have the citrus, the camphor wax, cinnamon, and coconut, all utilized in the chemical factory and or the restaurants and pubs and the cafes as well. And lastly, we have the ornaments that come bundled with the tourist DLC. So if we have a look at these, we have the first one. It's a map with an awning. We have a street map. We have our souvenir shop. We have a postcard vendor. We have the kiosk. A lookout point. A photography nook. A wooden pavilion. We have our ornate pavilion. A yellow parasol, blue parasol, red parasol, and a green parasol as well. We have a signpost that we can place down. A musician's stage over here for a mini band, which will play music that you can hear now. We have luggage, more luggage. We have cherry blossoms that have seating around them that you can place down. You have a regular cherry tree that you can plant. And we have a new set of flower beds. The purple, red, and yellow. They all have corner pieces, T-junctions, and they all have access to the topiaries in them as well. Now, the last thing in regards to ornaments and visual side of things, when you're in the tourist section as well, you'll actually see that there are tourists from different maps walking around your city now as well. So we have embezzlements walking around. So there's completely new sets of models and people walking around your streets as well. So it's been a fairly lengthy video covering this because there has been quite a lot with the DLC. So my overview thoughts on this. I think the Tourist DLC is a really good DLC. There's a lot of new mechanics that they brought in. A lot of new systems. There's lots of customizations. The aesthetics of it is really pretty. It can be filtered into any different stages of the actual gameplay, as there are consumption reductions for different stages of population. It's going to help boost your population numbers even higher with the tower. It's going to require working in and fitting into existing maps and jigging around with things. So it's going to have a lot of learning its nuances, and it can help people quite a lot. Hopefully you enjoyed today's video. If you do, appreciate any subscriptions on the channels and any likes on the video, and comment down below if there's anything you'd like me to cover off in the Tourist DLC or in general. Stay safe out there, and I'll catch you on the next one.